three of the premier jobs in college football that are now available. And there are certain scenarios, depending on who you talk to, who you believe, that there could be a couple of more. It's maybe the top, I don't know, 5 or 6 of the top 12, 15 jobs in college football potentially could be coming open. There were some rumors floating around about Steve Sarkisian before the weekend football began. He has attempted to put those to rest, as has his agency, CAA. But don't know exactly where that's going to go because obviously those things aren't usually out there for absolutely no reason whatsoever. We'll discuss that. Gordy Rush will be with us at 8:30. He does LSU sideline radio in Baton Rouge. Been there forever, knows the program well. We'll get his thoughts on it, as well as Ross Dellinger at 9:30, who broke the news. And then maybe what's next, not only for LSU but for college football from a coaching carousel perspective. And Tyler Watts is with us every Monday at 9 to just recap Alabama. He was in Columbia, so he'll give us his thoughts on that game and what the atmosphere was like and what he saw in person with the Crimson Tide. But Greg, what were your thoughts immediately yesterday afternoon when you heard Brian Kelly was going to be out as the LSU head football coach?
Well, things escalated quickly, right? I mean, that was probably the biggest takeaway immediately was, gosh, I mean, things went from fine to boiling over in 2 weeks. It's just crazy to me. I mean, I said this and had to do a little podcast reaction last night. I mean, you don't make this move unless you know for sure that there is someone out there that is better than Brian Kelly and will be better than Brian Kelly at running your program. And it's not like Brian Kelly was a complete failure. Like some guys I understand. Billy Napier, he had 4 years. He didn't get it done. I understand. James Franklin had 12 years. Like they were just kind of tired of him. I understand. This one was fast. So unless they have an idea of where this coaching search is going to go, to me it felt premature. So that's my big thing. And I gave the example of when Kirby Smart was about to become the head coach of South Carolina. Georgia had a good situation. Mark Richt was not a failure. Georgia had a good situation, but as soon as Kirby Smart was getting ready to take South Carolina, that's when Georgia's like, you know what, we actually have to fire Mark Richt because we can't let this guy go away or go to a place that was against one of our rivals. So they fired Mark Richt, even though things weren't bad there. They hired Kirby Smart, and the rest is history. So that's my only thought is maybe they have their eye on Lane Kiffin, for example, or they have a big fish on the line that we don't even know about.
Okay, I think that's all fair, and I agree with you for the most part on all of that. So let me alter the question with it. Do you believe that that is the case right now for LSU?
No clue. But you don't make this move unless you have a pretty good idea that you're definitely getting an upgrade. Because honestly, Cole, tell me this. Is the coaching candidate pool really, really good this year? I mean, I don't know if it's good or bad. I mean, we'll find out how good those teams are, how good they are once they get the job, and we've been there for 2 or 3 years. But it's not like the coaching candidate pool is like off the charts good this year. Is it? I mean, it doesn't seem like it is to me.
I think that depends on how much you want to pay. I mean, you can get just about anybody if you're willing to throw up $100 million. You can go get them, but obviously those guys need to be willing to leave. So I would guess, who's willing to leave? Number one, who's willing to take your job? How much money is going to be at your disposal to be able to go get them? Are you going to be able to front load that contract? How much going to be guaranteed? I think those are the factors there. But I'll just flip it to the other side, and I don't believe that that's the case. I don't think that that's real. I don't think that when you look at how Scott Woodward has operated in the past, I think he is a big game hunter, so to speak. He chases the big names, the ones who have the bigger resumes, and they usually command more money. But we know how they've ended also as well, and it brings to question why is that situation not being discussed by the LSU guard. I think some of this was forced as far as maybe him making certain decisions that some other people weren't on board with. And that may complicate things moving forward as far as how he's going to be concerned and how he's going to be able to help make this hire, whoever that's going to be. So I just don't look at it that way. Could it end up being that way? Probably, maybe, possibly. I don't know. I don't know either. It's just my opinion. It's the kind of how this went down. And I think the rapid pace that you mentioned in which this took place tells me that there wasn't a well thought out plan. that there wasn't a guy sitting with his name on a piece of paper in the drawer that said, if I ever get the chance, this is going to be my guy. Okay, now the fan base has soured on Brian Kelly. I don't think we're going to be able to get this back. This ship has sailed. We're going to go get so and so right now. That's just not how I think this played out, and just because of how he's operated in the past. So it'll be interesting to see though, because I believe you're like me. This is a top 5 job in college football. Some people say the best job in college football. I don't know if I would really push back on it. I think it's look at the proven nature of it winning with different head coaches. It's one that you have to look at as potentially the best job in America. I don't know where you would have it ranked, GMAC, but I don't know how anybody would have it outside the top 5.
Well, it was definitely top 5 in the original pre-NIL era. As far as their commitment to NIL financially, I don't know. I don't know where they're at now. I think top 10 for sure. No doubt about that. But I don't know what their pockets look like. Do they have as much money as, say, Texas or A&M? Probably not. I think they do pretty well, though. I think their roster is well compensated now. They were one of the highest spenders in the portal this past season. They obviously just gave Brian Kelly a $95 million contract 4 years ago. So I think they definitely have a pretty good situation, pretty good spot, pretty good setup if you are Brian Kelly and if you are a coach looking at candidates at opportunities elsewhere. I think both LSU and Florida are better jobs than Penn State, personally. I don't know if you agree. I think those two jobs are better. Access to talent, I think comparable resources, a lot to like, more recent history. Even though Penn State won championships, I've never seen one in my lifetime. So I think there's a lot to like about those 3 jobs. But to me, it would be LSU 1, Florida 2, Penn State 3.
Let me ask you this. Let's have this discussion here, because you and I are not going to be able to give definitives on this. As a matter of fact, I don't think anyone can give definitives on this, because when you said that, is this a job in the new one of the best jobs in the new era of college football? My brain went some interesting places there. Are you taking Texas Tech and saying they're a top 5 job now? I mean, are you taking other schools that can just go come up? I mean, is Memphis a top 5 job now? SMU a top 5 job that they can just buy their way into a league? Not saying you were alluding to that, but just because those teams can go out and find extra money for NIL, I don't know exactly what puts it in there. Like also, when you said access to talent, I think that's one of the things that's always going to be mentioned with LSU. How important is that right now with how recruiting is, where recruiting is, roster retainment? Okay, so you go dominate the high school landscape in Louisiana. How many of those guys are staying on your roster? And maybe not have nothing to do with can you afford them or can you pay them NIL that everybody else is paying them, but are they just going to be happy because now they have, even though it's only going to one window, they still have that option to leave. Whereas 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 25 years ago, they didn't have that option to be able to do that. So what do you even throw up there towards the top of the list of what makes a top 5, top 10 job in college football?
Well, the money's big. I think it depends on the eye of the beholder. I think to have a place like Texas Tech, for example, that has to go out and literally buy every one of their players because there wasn't this deep-rooted desire for a lot of their guys to go up and play for the Red Raiders. I think that can occasionally lead to lapses in culture. So I think you need to have the blend. You need to have an opportunity to pay and put together a financial plan that would have you super competitive, but also be a place that is remarkably desirable to student athletes that aren't necessarily moved exclusively by the bottom dollar. So I think it's a blend of those two. So no, Texas Tech is not a top 5 job to me. It's a much more attractive job today than it was 7 years ago, when it would have probably not even been a top 25 job. Now it's probably top 20. But the best jobs to me are still the jobs that have both historical significance, access to talent, a lot of support within the alumni and fan base, great facilities. Like, all those jobs still matter. So in whatever order you want to look at it, Ohio State, I think, is probably number 1 in the modern era. probably. I would say LSU's right there. I would say Georgia's right there. I would say Florida's right there. I'd say Alabama's right there. Um, I'd say Texas is right there. I mean, these are all, depending on the week, interchangeable. But yeah, those are probably the top six.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would push back on many of those. And I mean, we saw the rumors from Austin over the weekend. CAA has to release a statement saying that they're not seeking employment for Steve Sarkisian in the NFL, but those things don't get out there for absolutely no reason whatsoever. I don't believe that his camp was throwing out his name for those jobs, but I do think that there are some things being discussed in certain circles that would at least have people wondering what the future is going to look like. So if that one were to come open, where do you go fill that void? I think there's a bigger job out west that has a chance to come open with the coach making a move out there. I mean, Greg, we could be staring down the barrel here of half of the top 10, top 12 jobs in America being open. And go take that and then go back to what you just said on the candidate pool. And what is it really? How many guys, because we all talk about firing guys, we talk about buyouts, we talk about where people want to go, what people want to do. How many coaches are just flat going to want to move right now? Even if it's a little bit of a step up. Like I think Lane Kiffin's situation is very interesting in this particular discussion because his name, and please keep in mind, folks, because I've already had this headache. I'm not saying Lane Kiffin's going to Florida. I'm not saying Lane Kiffin's going to LSU. So you can save it. However, his name's going to be mentioned for both. He's had his name mentioned for LSU before. If I'm not mistaken, the outgoing head coach actually was one that threw his name out there and said that's who you should go hire. And we've heard his name be mentioned for Florida multiple times already. So he's the perfect candidate for this discussion that we're about to have. When you have a really good job right now. Not only that, you're doing things historically that have never been done at that program, ever. Never. 10-win seasons, potentially making the playoff, things in the postseason, overall wins, wins on the road as a ranked team, wins against ranked opponents. I mean, all these things he's doing to the extent that have never been done before. Not John Vaught, not Ed Orgeron, not Hugh Freeze. Nobody's done these things. And he'll have two jobs potentially at his disposal to be able to leave, maybe even make more money. I don't know. I feel like Ole Miss is ready to pony up and at least be close or competitive. Is it worth it to leave right now? When you got a good thing going.
Yes. Like I know Ole Miss fans are gonna like lose their mind about it, but like if you are Lane Kiffin, you have to listen. Doesn't mean he's ultimately gonna go. Just means he has to listen. Why? Because you're the most desirable guy on the block. Like 100%. And I think it's going to be hard this time to keep him away from LSU and or Florida. Just being honest, those programs, traditionally, Lane has had a remarkable run at Ole Miss, 10-plus wins multiple times, been to 11-win season. Like, he's had great run. It's unbelievable. But the reality is the reality. Historically, it has been harder to sustain success at Ole Miss than it has been at LSU. You can't deny that. Like, which program has bigger history? I mean, which program has national championships won by 3 coaches in the last 25 years? I mean, you can't deny that. So Lane Kiffin, it'd be reckless for him not to at least listen. Now, can Ole Miss pony up and keep him? Potentially. I think there's a part of him that really appreciates being at Ole Miss because Ole Miss was a place that took a chance on him. Ole Miss was a place that that gave him his shot, if you will. The Ole Miss was the place that said, hey, you know what? Regardless of what's happened in your past, we don't care. We just want you. And he's done a tremendous job and has won a lot of games. And I think he's going to the college football playoff this year. So I think it's great. But, yeah, I think it's a real strong possibility that Lane Kiffin is coaching elsewhere next year. I think it's a real strong possibility. Doesn't mean it's a lock, but I think it's a strong possibility.
No. And I think it's fine that it's a possibility. I think it's a fair question to say when you've got your staff in place, you're winning games, and you've proven now for 3-4 years in a row that this isn't sort of a little bit of a one-trick pony. This isn't, something that you stumbled upon one year and then you're going back to mediocrity. You've been able to work the portal the way that you have. You've obviously got some financial resources behind you now that a lot of people either didn't think you would or you didn't have initially, but now you do. And there's, of course, uncertainty at these other places you're going to go because it didn't work with the other guy that's won a lot of games, a lot of other places. So I wonder where the mindset's going to be for coaches. Definitely think you listen, no doubt. But are you as willing to jump as maybe you were 7 years ago, 17 years ago, 25 years ago? Because then it was a no brainer. You just left. But if he's proven he can win there and he's got the resources behind him, um, do you just look at the fact of why would I leave in such a time of uncertainty in college football with that particular program? Still don't know where certain things are going to go in the world of college football and how they're going to operate. I just think it's a fair question to sit back and say, are a lot of guys going to look at it as, oh, that's a better job. I have to leave right now? Because there's definitely some things that are going to continue to happen in college football with rules and adjustments and NIL and rosters and payments and conferences. So you don't know how the landscape's going to change in the next 3 months, 8 months, 12 months. And you've got things situated where you are. I just think it's an interesting thought because I think a lot of us would have said 5 years ago, 10 years ago, yeah, he's gone. He's going to leave. He's going to be over. There's no way he'll stay. And I do think now there's at least a chance you look at it and say, do you take that risk? Is it worth it? I don't know because if Florida was the best job in America, why aren't these coaches going there and winning anymore? Same thing with LSU. Brian Kelly was proven, but didn't go there and dominate the way people thought he would. So I just think it's an interesting thought. Football season moving on. You know that means changes in the weather are coming. Protect your HVAC system with a checkup from a trained comfort specialist. So when the cold weather hits, you'll have peace of mind that you're protected by America's most reliable and trusted brand. Find a comfort specialist near you at train.com. It's hard to stop a train. We'll continue the conversation not only of Brian Kelly being gone, but of Alabama and Auburn grabbing their wins and the rest of college football games, actual games, over the weekend next when we come back right here on Jocks. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 7:21 Monday, October 27th, right here on Jocks. Paul Finebaum coming up in 10 minutes. We did have actual games over the weekend that we're going to get to. We'll keep discussing Brian Kelly being out at LSU, what that means, what that job is going to look like for whoever comes in next. But as I said earlier, I do think some of the dysfunction happening at certain places may put at least a little bit of pause or second thought into some what most people would look at as obvious coaching candidates potentially taking those jobs. Alabama gets the win up at South Carolina. GMAC. It was hard fought. It was one that was a little bit closer than some fans maybe wanted to see. A couple of the reasons that we pointed out last week of potential complications really showed up for Alabama. Offensive line didn't have a great day, specifically in pass pro. Tackles really struggled. Not a lot of run yards to get going consistently to be able to lean on. You put the ball on the ground a couple of times. That's obviously, especially on the road in a difficult environment, it's going to make things a lot more difficult. Couldn't get Lenore Sellers to the ground for a couple of drives, allowed him to run around and continue to make plays. There wasn't a real consistent traditional run game for South Carolina. They did get inside zone going like just a smidge for like 2 drives in the second half, which I thought really helped them at that moment. But a couple big plays down the field, and Nick Carver had a big grab. But you go on the road to a tough environment against a team that's got some really good players, and you find a way to win. I'm never going to be mad at a team winning. I always think that when you show resolve and you battle back and you climb back from behind, there's something to be said about what you are and your makeup. What were your initial thoughts coming out of not just Alabama winning, but maybe how they had to do it?
I thought it was a great win. And look, everyone always wants to act like I'm looking at it through rose-colored glasses or crimson-colored glasses. To me, they played their C plus B minus game and got a win on the road against a team that has good personnel in certain spots on the field. That's the initial start. To play that poorly and find a way to win is remarkable. That's a great, great thing. And I'm kind of amazed at how many people are kind of like losing their mind about it, or in a negative way. Like, oh, see, Bama's flawed. Oh, see, Bama's this. Oh, see, Bama's that. Well, if they were flawed, they would have lost the game like Texas did to Florida. You know what I mean? I think Bama has things that they can iron out here. Here's what I saw. I saw a ton of missed opportunities. I saw a ton of plays that were just the tiniest bit off. I don't know if you saw it the same way I did, Cole, but to me, there were so many plays that were about this close. And those that are not watching on the YouTube channel, I'm like holding my hands up and it's about a centimeter apart. Just a slight off-target throw by Ty Simpson. And he probably had 4 or 5. When he was on target, there was a couple that were just a little too low that wouldn't allow for yards after catch, right? There was a couple drops in the game. Just on slightly, like a throw to Jeremy Bernard working across the middle. He's wide open, a little high. That's a catch that Jeremy should probably catch. Was it a good throw? It's a little bit of a miss, but not that bad. You know what I mean? The run game. I thought there was a lot more there in the run game, believe it or not. I thought play side, they did a decent job. I thought they did a really poor side on the backside of a handful of runs. Like guy left guard, not crossing face on an outside zone to the right-hand side. Guy on the backside made the play. That probably happened 2 or 3 times in the game. So I think that actually going back and watching it, I expected it to be worse than it was. I don't know if you saw it the same way. But I thought some of the stuff that happened in the game is very correctable and really not that bad.
You don't want to see the sloppy stuff. You don't want to see the drops. And it wasn't one player. It was a couple guys, as you stated. You don't want to see those, especially in bigger moments. Some of the backside cutoffs, I would agree with. And where they've been great with that prior to this is the pass plays that they've had sort of built off the runs that would punish teams for doing that. I thought South Carolina brought a pretty aggressive plan defensively. It's Clayton White. They're going to be. It's what they're going to do.
Of course.
But I give South Carolina a little bit of credit here, too. Nick Barrett's really coming on at D tackle. He played great. I mean, I think it was on full display what a good football player Brian Thomas is, and people still don't want to give him much credit at all. He's having a really nice year. And it was on full display what a freak show athlete Dylan Stewart is. Just the quickness, the get off, the ability to change directions, go inside. When your tackles are going to be in one-on-ones against those guys, there are going to be problems. There's not a corner on earth, unless Usain Bolt starts playing corner, that can run with Nick Harbor. There just isn't. It's not even a debate. It's not even a back and forth. There's not. And you had a quarterback that you needed to get to the ground. They didn't cage him. I didn't think they got him to the ground very well. There were moments where you thought he was on the ground, and then all of a sudden he just squirts out and either picks up 7 yards on the ground, or he's able to shoot a ball over to a tight end or a wide receiver, and they pick up a few more yards. So there were going to be parts of this team that were complicated, and by the way, there are going to be moving forward.
Yes.
They're going to give Ole Miss fits. They're going to give A&M some fits. Now, I mean, A&M's front will probably make that game really difficult for South Carolina, but they'll give Clemson fits. So they're going to get one of those games down the stretch. I truly believe that, just because they have too many playmakers on both sides of the ball. Are there a couple things you want to clean up? Yes, you do. But I look to the resolve in a stadium that I've been in a bunch, and I've been in for a bunch of close games, and not a lot of people slam the door on their face late in close games inside that stadium. It doesn't happen a lot, because that place usually gets to tilt pretty quickly when the game is close in the fourth quarter. So I think there are more positives to take away. It's survive in advance.
100%.
That's all it is right now. And when you can continue to do that, you're going to have a lot of success. And I think it's going to give you a lot more opportunity when the actual playoff does come. Before we go to Paul Finebaum, Greg, tell our listeners about Canty.
Well, Canty can fix it. That's for sure. Canty, Cantey, can fix it. That's the website. You can go and learn everything you want to know about Canty Foundation Specialists. They're the local experts in foundation repair, crawl space, basement, and concrete solutions. Here in Alabama, there's a lot of factors that can weigh in to the foundation problems in your home: the soil, the shifting or uneven ground, moisture, weather, lots, including the age of your home, cracks in the walls, floors or around windows and doors, doors and windows sticking or not closing properly, gaps between crown molding, baseboards, you name it. These are all signs that there's something that might be wrong with your foundation. So call Canty Foundation Specialists today. They offer free inspections and estimates so homeowners know exactly what's going on under their roof. Call them today at 205-509-3991. Their work is backed by lifetime transferable warranties, or you can go online at Canty, Cantey, canfixit.com. That's Canty, canfixit.com.
What does Paul Finebaum believe about who is a real candidate for the next LSU head coaching job? We'll ask him next right here on Jocks. Welcome back in, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. It is Monday, October 27th, 7:32 a.m., and LSU doesn't have a football coach. Well, a real one. They're going to be hiring a new coach at the end of the season, and we'll speak with Paul Finebaum about it. Who does he think may be a candidate for that next spot? We'll ask him next, and he's joined with us each and every week by our friends at Craneworks.
Lift it, load it, grade it, grind it, move it, haul it, rig it, dig it, Craneworks, Rentalworks, yeah! The big dog's got it.
Paul Finebaum on Mac and Cube in the morning is brought to you by Craneworks. Lift it, buy it, rent it, the big dog's got it. Now, Paul Finebaum.
Paul, it is always great to have you in on a Monday. Greg brought up the rapid nature of how this Brian Kelly firing took place. Before yesterday, when did you think that him losing his job this year was an actual reality?
I thought it looked like maybe more later in the season. Let's say he lost A&M and then to Alabama. I think that would have meant that all hope was lost. But I think it was the tone and tenor of the game, the fact that they were so hapless in the second half, and when you look around and you see that fan base completely walking out on you, and let alone your own team, I think the decisions become a lot easier. And I think there's a correlation between this one and Penn State. Florida was building for a long time, but I mean these things were rapid, sudden, and that's really the new nature of college football. Anyone who thinks that they're safe, just take a look at two of the biggest names in college football and probably the two biggest buyouts, and see how quickly these guys have gone.
The only thing that kind of has me kind of weirded out about the LSU thing is, like you said, how quickly it happened, but also at the same time, he was up 18-14 at one point and was fired within 24 hours. Less than 24 hours later from having a 4-point lead against the top 3 team in the country. It's insane. But I do think some of this has to do with them identifying a candidate, maybe it's Lane Kiffin, and or having a big fish on the hook. And that's why they felt like they had to act swiftly. Because to me, it felt premature, unless they clearly have their eyes set on somebody. So where do you think this coaching search goes?
Yeah, listen, it takes no effort to throw Lane Kiffin's name out there, which most of us have, including myself. I don't know what's going on in Kiffin's head, and anybody who claims to is probably just making that up, because he just had one of his biggest wins at Ole Miss Saturday. He's in a great spot for the playoffs, but that's not as critical as you pointed out before, Greg, because the portal really doesn't begin until after the second round of the playoff, and whether or not that involves Ole Miss is not really relevant at this moment. But it's hard for me to believe that LSU in the period of time that this game got away has already figured out who their guy is and whether he would accept it. We all know Scott Woodward. He's notorious for being against the grain. Brian Kelly was not your typical Jimmy Sexton tree. He has stayed away from that tree after the Jimbo Fisher experiment. But I don't think you can decide you're going to bring somebody in based on who their agent is. You have to bring somebody in based on whether, number one, you think they can take the job, or they'll take the job, and equally as important, whether they'll be successful.
Paul Finebaum with us on the Higginbotham Hotline. He's with us every Monday thanks to Craneworks. Greg and I kind of kicked this back and forth, and I think we're on a little bit of a different page with it. Will there be trepidation for coaches immediately leaving because these jobs are better? I think 7-8 years ago, absolutely. Florida comes open, Penn State comes open. Whether it was Texas A&M, the last couple of years that came open, you say, yes, I'm gone. We got to go. Texas comes open, whatever that is. Paul, I wonder now with where we're headed, where we are, the uncertainty of certain places and just certain things in college football. I think Lane Kiffin's the perfect litmus test for this. If he looks around and says maybe there's dysfunction there, or why couldn't those guys win, and he's got it pretty good at a job that is not on the same footing as some that are open, are these candidates going to be as immediate to leave as maybe they would before we met these changes that we've seen the last 5-6 years in college football?
I still think they will, because it's not like most normal people saying, I hate to leave this job because I don't know what I'll have on the other side and whether I'll be financially secure. I mean, everybody's financially secure in this business, and it takes that part out. It's just a matter of whether you go there and are successful. And Kiffin just, in my mind, has always just seemed restless at Ole Miss, as much as he has tried to convince everybody that this is his nirvana. I just don't believe it. Yeah, he likes it there. His family likes it there, and that was all about not going to Auburn. This is different. This is one of those jobs that he has to. I mean, I've always thought he coveted Florida, but there's something about LSU that's even more attractive than Florida. And I just have a hard time believing that Lane Kiffin is not intrigued by it. I frankly believe he is.
I totally understand why. I think Florida is outstanding. Which job's better, Florida or LSU?
I think it's LSU. Now, they're both on a similar par, Greg, in terms of the fan base and expectations. There's the machinations of the two jobs are a little different. Florida is a little more inward in terms of what the fans are saying and the boosters. LSU is very political, as we see. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that the governor of the state of Louisiana, called the shots here. But that's Louisiana. Florida's a lot bigger. It's a lot different. But I vote for LSU over Florida, even though Florida, we've all said it was better than Penn State.
Paul, there are certain people that if you listen to will allude to the fact that more massive jobs are opening. We heard the Steve Sarkisian rumors that got going on Friday afternoon. Those were attempted to be put to rest, but there are even other jobs that certain people would say, be it the NFL, be it a different college job were to come open, will also be open. How close are we to the end of big jobs being open in this coaching cycle, in your opinion?
We're nowhere near the end of that. And I mean, listen, if you're sitting there at Kentucky this morning and your program is just crashing and burning, are you going to be able to sell your fan base on, hey, listen, we just can't afford to buy the coach out? That makes you look like you're not even in the same league as everybody else. What, rightly or wrongly, Auburn, would we be having this conversation if Auburn hadn't have come back in the second half? I mean, I don't think anyone is really safe anymore. That's the conclusion of the last couple of weeks. I mean, I hate to keep saying the same thing, but we are seeing the same thing every couple of weeks, that we've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like Penn State, but in some ways this is even more dramatic because it's a shorter time period. What Greg alluded to a minute ago, this is a good coach at a good program that has lost to two top 10 teams and will likely lose to another top 10 team in about 12 days. I think Kelly just set himself up because, whether the fit conversation was legitimate or not, he never felt comfortable there. That just may be who Brian Kelly is. He's a very good football coach, but he has an extremely cold personality to most people.
He's a Hall of Famer, but he's definitely I can understand where maybe fit was uncomfortable for some people for sure. So beyond Lane Kiffin, the obvious candidate for every job, might as well just, he's going to be a candidate for Colorado State too. I mean, put him on the list. Who else do you think is on the short list for LSU? I mean, we've kind of done this with Florida already. Anyone that sees Matt Campbell wearing a Florida Gator visor, I don't see that. But who do you think's a real candidate for LSU right now?
Well, I mean, you look at the names that get thrown out. Dillingham, Summerall, Drinkwitz. I mean, even Marcus Freeman's name popped up, and the idea of two Notre Dame coaches in a row going to LSU would be the lottery shot of all time. But I mean, those are, I think you round up the usual suspects, but also knowing Scott Woodward, and the real question is how much influence will Scott Woodward have in this hire? His track record is pretty self-evident. He goes for unique winning coaches, which is part of the reason he went for Brian Kelly. But it's also worth remembering, and we can debate this, and I'm not really sure I know the answer, but I've always felt like Lincoln Riley was his first choice a couple of years ago.
Whew, that would be an interesting one in this league, Paul. When you think about that perspective of it, who is where are you on fit right now? Because I've tried to make myself not really use that phrase anymore. Because you look at Sam Pittman at Arkansas, Ed Orgeron at LSU, like we've seen some perfect fits. It would appear not work and quickly show that they're not going to work. How important is that, or is that even a real thing moving ahead? Because I do agree with you also that when you looked at Brian Kelly, it kind of wasn't a fit and didn't feel like it had a great chance of working out. Just from that perspective, how do you view that point of where we're going with college coaches and who and why is going to be hired?
I don't think fit is that important. Now, LSU is one of those places where you have to understand the culture, though. And because it is unique, and the whole Tommy Moffitt thing and all these things that may not mean much to uh, the average person mean a lot inside that system. But yeah, I mean, Saban's is the one that everybody always brings up. But Nick Saban was crafty. He was a genius at understanding where he was and understanding the room. And I'm not sure Brian Kelly ever mastered that. And you know, it's ridiculous to keep bringing up his opening address at the basketball game, but it keeps coming up. So it's not ridiculous. But I don't think it's that important. I think smart coaches can look at where they are and build a team around them and be successful because I mean, is Lane Kiffin a fit anywhere for that matter? But he's been successful at Ole Miss.
Well, Paul, we always appreciate you hopping on every Monday. Thanks for chiming in, and we'll catch up with you again next week.
Look forward to it. Thank you, guys.
There you go. Paul Finebaum joined with us each and every Monday by Craneworks. His thoughts on that LSU job. We'll take your thoughts. 800-239-9569 if you want to get in. Let us know who you think is next, who is a real candidate. If it's not Lane Kiffin, who else is real for this job? You just begin going around some of the candidates for these bigger jobs, and it's like you run out of room really fast, it feels like. So we'll discuss that more next right here on Jocks. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 8:48, Monday, October 27th. Who should be next at LSU? What should the criteria be for their next coach? Because, Greg, if you go to just on resume, just on criteria, when LSU hired Brian Kelly, you could not like him personally. That's fine. That doesn't have anything to do with his coaching credentials. There weren't many hires that would have been better when they made the hire as far as what he had accomplished as a coach. So it only brings the question this time around, like, how are you bettering that with this next hire?
That's the biggest question. I think a lot of people that disagree with the hire at the time, they'll go back and they'll look at it and they'll say, well, this guy did this guy did this. Well, it didn't work. And I told you it wasn't going to work. Name a guy with more credentials than Brian Kelly when he got that job. The guy had won everywhere he'd ever been. The only thing he hadn't done was win a national championship. That's why he was there. Because guess what? The last 3 coaches at LSU all won national championships, and 2 of the last 3 are not great coaches. No disrespect to Les Miles and Ed Ogeron. Do you think they're top 3 coach in college football? No, not necessarily. Who do you think's a better coach in general? Ed Ogeron, Brian Kelly, or Les Miles? Based on accomplishments, obviously Brian Kelly. So I don't blame him for thinking that things are going to go a certain way and he was going to figure out a way to win and all this other stuff. I don't blame him for thinking that, but I think some of this had to do with fit. I think some of it has to do with the fact that this new 12-team playoff, man, we have yet to reset our expectations as fans. And I'm not saying people should settle. I'm not saying people just think it's automatic to make the playoff. It's automatic. Like, roll the ball out there and make the playoff. Like, no, anything less than a playoff berth is a failure. Yo, that's not the case, man. It's freaking hard to make the playoff. It's hard to finish in the top 12, especially when there are teams in other leagues that don't play anybody of significance and their record's really good and they make the playoff in front of you because you're having to run a gauntlet. Like, making the playoff is not some birthright. It's hard. And there's going to be seasons when you don't win games. It's just going to happen. There's going to be seasons when your team stinks. It's just going to happen. And it's not your fault. It's just that's the way the world works now, and the margins are so thin. Do you realize this? Going into last week's game, Cole, the margin of victory in the Southeastern Conference was 10.3 points per game. That's the margin of victory between SEC teams. So in conference games, the margin was 10.3. Guess what the margin of victory was in the NFL? The most parity in the history of college football, in the history of the world, when it comes to football, is in the NFL, right? Any given Sunday, you can see a Jets team knock off a Bengals team, correct? Well, do you realize that the parity in the SEC is actually better than the NFL right now? The margin of victory going into last week in the NFL was 10.9 points. So the games are half a point closer in the SEC. And guess what? This past weekend in the NFL, only 1 game was decided by single digits. So that number is going to grow, whereas the SEC number is probably going to get tighter. It's insane.
It is. And it's going to be interesting to see just kind of where it goes as far as those expectations, because it's becoming harder to win big, yet some people view it as easier to turn things around more quickly. Those don't always go together with the sustainability of a program or sustained success. Sutton is in College Station. He wants to hop on, talk college football. Sutton, welcome into the show. You're on the Higginbotham Hotline.
Howdy, guys. Good morning. I was in South Bend week 3 and then on Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. And I got to ask you guys, with the CFP coming out on Tuesday, when you're looking at those top teams, who has 2 better wins than the Aggies? On the road in South Bend at night, in Death Valley at night, 2 ranked wins on the road. Comparing that to Indiana and comparing that for sure on Ohio State, when you see how impotent the T-SIPs are this year, just like your guys' both take on the CFP on Tuesday.
Are you really suggesting that you think the 2 wins that A&M has are better than 2 wins any other team has in the country right now? I just want to make sure I hear that right. An unranked LSU
of the top rank. No. They were not unranked, and Notre Dame is not unranked when we played them.
Is LSU ranked right now?
Top 5. No, because we beat them at night.
Okay, well, does LSU get credit for beating Clemson when they played them earlier in the year because they were ranked in the top 5? Like, no, you have to evaluate based on the current moment.
No. Does Oregon get the benefit of going in to the whiteout and absolutely dunking in overtime?
Absolutely not. They don't. Not to me.
Penn State. Absolutely. Well,
Penn State's 3-4. Absolutely not. No, Oregon does not get credit for that, which is why Oregon, to me, would be like the 4th or 5th best one-loss team. Like, absolutely not.
Okay, so who has better wins that's in the top 5 than A&M?
Alabama has 2 wins that are much, much better than what we've seen from Texas A&M. 2 wins. They went to Georgia, won at night.
Okay.
And they went to they played against Vanderbilt, who also has just 1 loss and won that game by double digits. So, yeah, Alabama has a better resume.
So use your logic on what Oregon did against Penn State and what Penn State became. What has Florida State become?
That's fine. I'm not I'm not saying Alabama should be ranked ahead. I'm not saying Alabama should be ranked ahead of A&M. I am purely pushing back on the fact that you just said verbatim who has 2 better wins than Texas A&M, Notre Dame and LSU. Who has 2 better wins than that? I just gave you a team that has 2 better wins than that. Are we on the same page?
No,
you think a win at LSU is better than a win at Georgia?
Absolutely. Being down 4 at halftime and blowing their doors off, and with 12 minutes left to play in the 4th quarter, there's more Aggies in the stadiums than Tigers. And there's 12 minutes left to play in the game.
I just want to make that's great that you feel that way. You're wrong. Winning at Georgia is a better win than a win at LSU this year. I'm not trying to be wrong. I'm not trying to be critical. It's just that's not true. And yes, if you want to compare the top 3 teams in the country, I would argue that Indiana still has the best win amongst the top 3 teams. That's a road win at Oregon. Because Oregon, right now, I think is a little better than Notre Dame. Doesn't mean they'll be there at season's end, but I think the Aggies are appropriately ranked at 3. But I also, at the same time, look at what Ohio State's done, and their level of dominance and consistency is pretty dang off the charts.
All right, we got more coming. More of your phone calls next right here on Jocks.